Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Tang Garden and is from Thundergriff Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Go there, find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you will consider backing the project. Now, Tang Garden is a competitive game. You and the other players are landscaping engineers during the period of the Tang dynasty, a very well-known period in ancient China. You actually are you are the landscape engineers for the imperial dynasty in their imperial garden, and you're trying to build it up with special plots like koi ponds and bridges and rock formations, yen rock formations, or yen is the currency, zen rock formations, and also special decorations like trees of different types and things like that. So that's thematically what you're doing, and how that actually works in gameplay terms is like through tile placement and figure placement. You're trying to get as many coins as possible as a landscaping engineer. You're getting income for impressing all of the different people who are going to be witnessing this. And along those lines as well, you're going to have special characters that are going to be not only giving you the benefit of their skills, but then you can send them out into the garden to view your works, and hopefully they'll be impressed by that. And of course, in game terms, you're getting coins, which are points. So we always got to talk about game terms. But in any event, while that sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on, it's actually pretty straightforward. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game. So a lot of what you see here actually is going to be pretty final it's pretty impressive for a prototype version, but as always, I must point out that what you see may change in the final version, and that is why it is very important for you to go to the Kickstarter page to find out more information about what you can expect in that final version. But regardless, we will do that, and then we are going to come back and we will discuss it further. Tang Garden is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. Each player is a landscape engineer living in the era of the legendary Tang dynasty, and you've been charged with building up the imperial garden of the emperor. You'll each install different gardening plots and decorations and so on, and then have them inspected. The goal is to be rewarded with income and have the most money by the end of the game. Set up by laying out the garden board. A large starting central garden tile is placed in the center of the garden in any orientation. There are 4 different stacks of square garden tiles with different backs, and you'll shuffle them and stack them in the 4 matching corners, with the tile on top of each one flipped up. There are also landscape tokens that need to be placed around the board. As opposed to landscape tokens, there are landscape tiles in small and large varieties. Shuffle each stack and flip one off the top of each so that 2 tiles of each type are always visible and available. Then, put one in the starting space at each edge of the board in the small slots where they can stand upright. There are several different types of garden decorations that you'll need to construct and make stocks of near the board, including trees, bridges, pavilions, etc. These correspond to decoration cards, which for now you'll just shuffle and place near the board, along with a stock of coins in various denominations. Each player gets a board where they'll keep track of their landscaping accomplishments with 3 different tracks, and their lantern tokens that are still available, which they'll get a full set of on the top of the board. A set of cubes in a color of their choice will keep track of your levels in each type, which may be modified with certain starting characters. Speaking of that, everyone will get 1 character card with a special skill and an accompanying figure. Place the figure on the card to indicate that that skill is indeed active. All the rest of the character cards are shuffled and placed near the board together with their figures, and 2 cards flipped face up near the deck. Randomly decide the first player and give them the engineer token, then begin. Players will take their turns in clockwise order, and each turn consists of a mandatory action and may also include 1 or 2 optional actions. While you must take a mandatory action, you have 2 choices on how to take it. First, you can build up the garden. Take one of the top tiles from one of the 4 stacks and place it adjacent to 1 or more tiles already on the board, including possibly the starting tile. The new tile's edges that abut the existing tiles must have matching terrain. Water to water, greenery to greenery, rock to rock. The only exception to this is if there's a wall on the edge, which can match up with anything. Don't immediately flip up a new tile on the stack you took from. You only make sure all 4 stacks have tiles that are face up if there are less than 2 tiles currently face up. Once played, you will immediately get rewarded based on the nature of the placement. For every edge that matches terrain types of the existing tiles, you can advance the corresponding levels on your board. If you ever make it to the end of these tracks, you'll get 9 bonus coins. If by placing a tile you manage to enclose an area with all one terrain type, you gain an additional level of that type. Walls can also be used for this. Gain a coin if you match up footpath edges, or if the placement matches up 2 edges with footpaths, you can either gain 2 coins or gain another level on any track of your choice. Another important thing that can happen involves the landscape tokens that have been placed around the board. If the placed tile covers one of these tokens, it is removed from the board and gained by that player, and they immediately take one of the visible landscape tiles of a corresponding type, small or large. It must be placed into any slot of the appropriate size on the board, and then you have to make sure there are still 2 tiles of each size visible. These landscape tiles that are placed on the board are important for something that will come up later with something called site preference for characters. We'll get to that. Some of the garden tiles are special. While they do not need to match the edges of existing tiles you place them against, if you do abut them against specific edges, you will gain special rewards. For instance, the Lotus Pavilion gives you 1 coin just for placing it, but an additional coin for every water edge that it's placed against. Instead of garden building for your mandatory action, you can instead get a decoration and place it. Draw 2 cards plus 1 for every face-down tile on the 4 stacks. Choose 1 decoration card and discard the rest. The card is kept face up in front of you for scoring purposes later, and the physical decoration is placed on a garden tile that matches the terrain symbol on the card. Decoration cards can have a one-time bonus, which will either move you up one of the tracks on your player board or let you take one of the landscape tokens off the board without having to cover it up with a garden tile. But they also have a more important aspect, and that's for endgame scoring. You can gain a lot of coins by having decoration cards with the right allotment of symbols. For instance, 12 coins if you have the most pavilions, or 6 if you have the second most. Or you can gain coins based on how many pairs of bird and fish icons that you have amongst your decorations. Or an escalating amount of coins up to 25 if you have up to 5 tree icons, and so on and so forth. Regardless of the outcome of placing a decoration, the player who did must then make sure every stack of garden tiles has its top tile flipped up. In this way, if the next player in order tries to decorate, they're penalized with less card options, while someone who waits a while will have more cards to draw but has less options to draw from when they're picking out garden tiles. Before or after a mandatory action, however you decide to do it, you have 2 optional actions you can take and can even do both. First, you can influence a character. Now, as stated before, you begin the game with 1 character and can always use their special skill, which almost always involved getting extra coins whenever you or another player takes a specific type of gardening or decorating action. But they also have another ability called site preference, which will come into play at the end of the game. You can only influence a character when all 3 cubes on your board have advanced to one of the character rows on the track. Then you can take one of the 2 face-up characters near the deck along with its figure, drawing and flipping another card to replace it. You must then immediately decide which of your characters, including possibly the one that you just took, will go out into the garden. You do this by taking their miniature and placing it on an available round space out on a placed garden tile and facing him or her in a specific direction. This is important. At the end of the game, that character will get you coins based on whether or not specific terrain and or upright landscape tiles are in their line of sight. This is called site preference, as I mentioned before. Another important note, a character in the garden can no longer give you the use of their skill. Though, through this method, you will always have 1 character giving you their skill that has their miniature still on the card. The other optional ability is to use a lantern tile. Each tile is only usable once per game, and you can only use 1 per round. Once it's used, it's flipped down to its exhausted side. Each does something different. One of them lets you build 2 garden tiles at once. Another lets you place 2 decorations at once. One of them lets you move and turn one of your characters in the garden, as long as it's already in the garden. And the last lets you dig for either a character or a garden tile of your choice when you take those actions, instead of only being able to take a visible card or tile. Once you're done with your mandatory action and possibly taking optional actions, play goes to the next player, and you're going to keep doing this in clockwise order. The game end is triggered when either there are 3 or less landscape tokens still on the board, or one of the 4 garden stacks is completely depleted. The game continues until the end of the turn of the player to the right of the start player. Basically, everyone should have the same number of turns by the end. Then, figure out everyone's score. You'll add up all the coins you gained during the course of the game, together with new coins you'll get at the end for special conditions. This includes every icon-based special effect from decorations you built, and coins from characters in the garden if you match their site preference. And don't forget about the coins you get for finishing the tracks on your player board. Whoever ends up with the most coins at the end of the game is the winner. That is Tang Garden. Well, I don't think there's anyone in the board gaming community at large who is ever going to get tired of the theme of ancient or feudal China or Japan or a lot of other Asian cultures, because usually it involves a board game that is really, really beautiful to look at. And I don't believe that Tang Garden is an exception to that rule. Like other games of its ilk, you can see what you're building up. It's not such a matter of just putting token to token, and taking tokens and then putting more tokens out in tiles and things like that. While you are doing that in a technical sense, in this case, you are literally building up a garden. You're putting out very colorful, high-quality tiles with artwork, high-quality artwork that is building out this landscape with different terrain, the rocks, the water, the greenery, and then actually putting cardboard miniature trees and different like koi ponds and pavilions and things like that. So as you're playing the game, you are building up this thing. You are all watching it grow together and contributing towards that as well as the landscape tiles around, again, with very high quality artwork. So you start off with this blank white board, although it's got artwork on it as well, but just this very stark white board that with some drawing that turns into this colorful, beautiful thing by the end. And so I think while there are other games that have something similar to that rely a lot on artwork and high quality components, Tang Garden uses it to its advantage as far as gameplay as well, because in the end, what you are doing is competitive tile placement and the efficiency of the actions that you have. You only have that one mandatory action per round. How are you going to use it, and how effectively are you going to use it? And if you think you can just get by with like, oh, on my turn I'll just do the best thing I have available, that's not going to work for you. You need to be planning things out far in advance. It's not just enough to say, oh, I'll put this here, get some coins. You have to be planning ahead of like, well, by putting this here, how is this going to work with the decorations that I might want to place? How is this going to work with the decorations I've already placed, and how I need to have this certain amount of terrain to put out more so I can get the right type of icon bonus at the end, because I need more trees in order to get the most out of this bonus, or I need more birds paired with fish icons that I've already got. Or how about the characters? If you have a character that you took with the character influence action, but you, like, let's say it's a character who gives you amount of points based on if they can see certain landscape in the distance or certain terrain like rocks or greenery, but the only available space you can place them is not going to get them that bonus, that's going to be a waste for you. Now, you can always use one character for their special skill, but if you're taking more characters than that, you need to make sure you're getting the most points out of them based on where they are out in the garden. So you need to set up for that. Make sure that they have a vista that they actually want to see to gain their points. Not to mention, I didn't go over too much of these details in the preview section, but there are some characters that have very specific rules for that. Like the Empress does not want to see the Emperor, and you could lose coins that way. All of these different things need to be taken into account. And you're trying to move up on those tracks as much as possible. You have those lantern tokens you can use, but you only can use them once per game and once per round. So it's very, very selective when you decide to use them. Very carefully of how you're going to use them. So you have a lot of decisions in this game, despite the fact that your turn might be very quick. Mandatory action, maybe an optional action. You're not going to do that every round. So your turns are going very, very quickly. You're never just pondering for too long, but you have to, waiting for someone else to go. But you do have to very carefully consider what you're going to do with your limited amount of actions, because with just that one action per round, you need to make it count. So It's not an overly complex game because of the fact that it's so thematic in what the actions that you take directly correspond to the theme, and you can see it visibly built out there. Because of that, it's very easy to figure out how to play this game and how to teach it to others. And again, the turns go very quickly, so the game is not overstaying its welcome. But there is a very high level of decision making and strategy involved as to how to get the most points by the end. A casual gamer can play it, but you need to be a very skilled gamer to actually excel at it. So if any of that sounds like it appeals to you, if you like that theme, if you like the idea of building up something that turns out gorgeous by the end, and if you like very strategic tile placement and action selection, things like that, don't take my word for it. Go to the official Kickstarter project page, find out more information for yourself. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Tang Garden from Thunderdrift Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.